preparing for my live streaming. Good. It's on. So I just want to tell you that I knew that if I kept looking, I would find Nevada's plan online. And I found it. So I want to be able to share it. And that's just real. Since none of us really had an opportunity to participate in the writing of this plan, let's see what it says. Okay, we've got to select it all. There you go. Good. Okay, there we go. And now begin. Because this is Nevada's plan without the people. You get me? Yeah, real. Where's the speech? There we go. Start speaking.
Nevada Department of Education submitted September 7th, 2021 American Rescue Plan, Education for Homeless Children and Youth Part B, Programmatic, Fiscal, and Reporting Assurances D. Within 60 days from publication of this application, the SEA will submit a plan to homeless@eda.gov that contains the following information. For ARP Homeless I. 1. How the SEA has used or will use up to 25% of funds awarded under ARP Homeless I for state-level activities to provide training, technical assistance, capacity building, and engagement at the state and LEA levels, including support to LEAs to increase access to summer programming in 2021. This must include how the SEA has supported LEAs to plan for and provide wraparound services, in collaboration with state and local agencies for immediate needs this spring 2021, and how it will support LEAs for school year 2021-2022. This should include the extent to which the SEA has or plans to build capacity in LEAs that have not received an EHCY subgrant in the past in order to ensure that these LEAs are well prepared to utilize the funds provided in ARP Homeless 2. The Nevada Department of Education, NE, will use 25% of ARP Homeless I funds for state-level activities to provide training, technical assistance, capacity building, and engagement at the state and LEA levels. Examples of activities that NDE plans on using ARP Homeless I state-level activities funding for this purpose includes, but is not limited to, the following. A. Landscape of needs of children and youth experiencing homeless across Nevada, Black Small Square, partner with evaluators to conduct a statewide comprehensive landscape analysis of students experiencing homelessness to pinpoint areas of need strengths and where additional supports are needed, including training, technical assistance, capacity building, and engagement at the state and LEA levels. B. Partner with community-based organizations throughout state to assist with the identification and support of youth experiencing homelessness. C. Partner with national organization to provide technical assistance and capacity building for SEA and LEA leaders on identifying and supporting youth and families experiencing homelessness. The SEA has conducted an ARP Homeless Technical Assistance TA webinar for LEAs where we reviewed ARP Homeless I priorities, requirements, and allowabilities to support LEAs in use of these funds. This included discussing how funds can be used to provide wraparound services to students. NDE has also coordinated ARP Homeless I brainstorming sessions planned to assist with LEA capacity building.
Really?
These sessions provide an opportunity for LEAs to discuss innovative strategies for addressing the needs of students experiencing homeless with LEAs. The Education for page 1 of 5. Nevada Department of Education submitted September 7, 2021 Homeless Children and Youth, EHCY, State Coordinator serves as a thought partner to ensure statewide coordination of efforts and that all LEAs are well prepared to utilize ARP Homeless funds. In addition, regularly scheduled CLE meetings and office hours support current EHCY LEAs and LEAs that have not received an EHCY subgrant in the past. This approach allows also grantees opportunities to adjust their strategies and activities to prevent supplanting in line with applicable guidance. Moreover, NE has developed a Path Forward resource guide to help support LEAs in their planning of federal relief funds. Within this resources, there are suggested strategies on what LEAs and schools can do to provide wraparound services to students, including students experiencing homelessness. 2. How the SEA has used or will use their funds for state-level activities to provide support to LEAs to increase access to summer programming and plan for and provide wraparound services for summer 2021 in collaboration with state and local agencies and other community-based organizations. And due to the state of Nevada's internal approval process timelines, NDE did not have the legal authority to utilize ARP homeless state-level activities funding for summer 2021.
Really? Oh no.
However, during regularly scheduled CLE meetings and office hours, NDE continues to support LEAs in ensuring that students experiencing homelessness have the resources they need, including wraparound services and other programming to thrive educationally. 3. How the SEA has used or will use at least 75% of funds awarded under ARP Homeless for distribution to LEAs in accordance with all requirements of EHCY. This must include the extent to which the SEA has or will use funds to supplement existing EHCY subgrants to allow for more rapid fund distribution to address the needs of students experiencing homelessness, and the extent to which the SEA analyzed and reviewed where there are significant concentrations of students and families experiencing homelessness across the state, including in LEAs that are not existing EHCY subgrantees, and how it has or will ensure that supports from ARP Homeless can urgently reach them. NE has used 75% of funds awarded under ARP Homeless for distribution to LEAs in accordance with all requirements of EHCY, to allow for the rapid distribution of funds. Per federal guidance, the SEA has distributed these funds to current EHCY subgrantees to supplement existing EHCY subgrants. ARP Homeless funds were distributed to current EHCY subgrantees in the same proportion they received McKinney-Vento awards. These funds are distributed through NDE's online grants management system to allow funds to be available to LEAs in an efficient, streamlined, and expedient manner. LEAs must respond to specific questions within the online system before they can be allocated funding to ensure all EHCY requirements are met. NE has regular communication with its LEA McKinney-Vento liaison and has used these meetings to analyze and review with liaison where there are significant concentrations. Page 2 of 5. Nevada Department of Education submitted September 7, 2021 of students and families experiencing homelessness across the state. Further, we held an initial stakeholder engagement meeting with stakeholders who represent students and families experiencing homelessness to assist with this analysis and review. In addition to these regular communications, NDE will also utilize the landscape analysis described in question I-1 to target areas of need to ensure that supports from ARP homeless funds can reach the areas where there are significant concentrations of students and families experiencing homelessness across the state. 2. For ARP homeless 2. 1. How the SEA will use up to 25% of funds awarded under ARP Homeless 2 for state-level activities to provide training, technical assistance, capacity building, and engagement at the state and LEA levels, including support to LEAs to plan for and provide wraparound services, in collaboration with state and local agencies, for school year 2021-2022, and the SEA will use 25% of ARP Homeless 2 funds for state-level activities to provide training, technical assistance, capacity building, and engagement at the state and LEA levels. NDE's plan for the strategic use of these funds is derived from stakeholder feedback in addition to data and information from the National Voices of Youth Count report by Chapin Hall at the University of Chicago. The examples of activities that NDE plans to use ARP Homeless to state-level activities funding for includes, but is not limited to, the following. A. Statewide professional learning and training for the SEA, LEAs and school-level educators on understanding the McKinney-Vento law requirements and how to best meet the needs of these students experiencing homelessness. B. Statewide LEA and school resources for supplemental educational supports for students experiencing homelessness. C. Development of training and technical assistance materials and translation of those materials into Spanish and other languages spoken by students and families across the state. D. continuation of evaluation to measure effectiveness of funds. Maintenance of the expansion of statewide data collection system for students experiencing homelessness. 2. How the SEA will use at least 75% of funds awarded under ARP Homeless 2 for distribution to LEAs in accordance with the final requirements. This must include a description of how the SEA will distribute funds in accordance with the required formula to address the needs of students experiencing homelessness and the extent to which the SEA has encouraged or will encourage the creation of consortia for those LEAs that may not meet the required minimum formula amount. The SEA will use 75% of funds awarded under ARP Homeless 2 for distribution to LEAs in accordance with the final requirements. NDE created a spreadsheet with the requisite formula embedded to ensure LEA allocations are on page 3 of 5. Nevada Department of Education submitted September 7, 2021 alignment with the final requirements.
Really?
LEAs will have access to the funds and will need to submit a plan that meets all necessary requirements for use of these funds before they can officially receive them. In an ARP Homeless TA webinar NDE hosted, LEAs were made aware of the consortia requirement for LEAs whose allocation is less than $5,000. The LEAs that will be required to join a consortia are Esmeralda County School District, Eureka County School District, Lander County School District and Storr County School District. NDE has offered assistance to these LEAs to help form consortia.
Really?
In addition, NDE will facilitate meetings, as needed, with these 4 LEAs to support the formation of consortia. We will keep LEAs abreast of any consortia technical, grants and programmatic requirements and updates throughout the grant award period for these funds, for both ARP Homeless and ARP Homeless 2. 1. How the SEA will ensure that ARP HCY supplements the support and services provided with ARP ESSER funds and does not replace the use of ARP ESSER funds to support the needs of students experiencing homelessness. The SEA will ensure that ARP HCY supplements the support and services provided with ARP ESSER funds and does not replace the use of ARP ESSER funds to support the needs of students experiencing homelessness. As part of the assurances for ARP HCY funds, each LEA must certify that they will not use ARP HCY funds to supplant ARP ESSER funding reserved for students experiencing homelessness. ARP HCY supplements the support and services provided with ARP ESSER funds and does not replace the use of ARP ESSER funds to support the needs of students experiencing homelessness. 2. The extent to which such as rural children and youth, tribal children and youth, students of color, children and youth with disabilities, English learners, LGBTQ+ youth, and pregnant, parenting, or caregiving students experiencing homelessness, and connect them to educationally related support and wraparound services and means. Once ARP ESSER LEA applications are submitted, they will be reviewed by NDE has explained this requirement to LEAs to ensure they are aware and understand exactly what this NDE to ensure all requirements have been met. The ARP HCY LEA applications will follow this same process. NDE will take note of the activities, strategies, and interventions that have been reserved for students experiencing homelessness in each LEA's initial ARP ESSER application. When reviewing subsequent revisions of each LEA's ARP ESSER application, NDE will ensure that no funding which was initially reserved for students experiencing homelessness has been eliminated and replaced with ARP HCY funds. This regular cross-check will ensure that the SEA will use its state-level activities funds to award subgrants or contracts to community-based organizations that are well-positioned to identify children and youth experiencing homelessness in historically underserved populations. NDE will use its state-level activities funds to award subgrants or contracts to community-based organizations that are well-positioned to identify children and youth. Page 4 of 5. Nevada Department of Education submitted September 7, 2021 experiencing homelessness in historically underserved populations. The SEA is in the process of identifying and reaching out to these types of community-based organizations across the state through research and collaboration with LEAs and other state agencies. The SEA has reserved funding from its state-level activities specifically for the purpose of subgranting to and/or contracting with community-based organizations that are focused on supporting historically underserved student populations. NDE plans on providing guidance and technical assistance to these types of community-based organizations and to also have regular communication with them to measure, monitor, progress of identifying children and youth experiencing homelessness in historically underserved populations. 3. During its ARPHCYTA webinar for LEAS, NDE shared information on the importance of LEA community partnerships and encouraged LEAS to award contracts to community-based organizations to assist in identifying and supporting historically underserved populations experiencing homelessness. Further, the SEA has hosted ARPHCY-LEA brainstorming sessions to discuss strategic ways to utilize ARPHCY funds and further discussed and encouraged LEAs to use their ARPHCY funding for these purposes. NDE also will continue to encourage LEAs to utilize the Path Forward Resource Guide as a resource to seek partnerships with community-based organizations to assist them with supporting students experiencing homelessness. Over the course of each school year and life of the grant, NDE will continue to encourage LEAs to leverage their community-based organizations as key resources stakeholders to identify, engage, and support youth experiencing homelessness. How the SEA will encourage LEAs to award contracts to community-based organizations to help identify and support historically underserved populations experiencing homelessness. SEA will continue to encourage LEAs to award contracts to community-based organizations to help identify and support historically underserved populations experiencing homelessness. Page 5 of 5.
Well, did you hear that? Let me click on this and see what it takes me to. You know, they have a Path Forward guide, y'all. Path Forward guide that I never saw. But we all need to see it. It's going to open up any minute. There we go. This is wonderful. Let me just stop the share for a second. And I have to go back in here and download this so that we can understand the path forward because, you know, hey, it's real. It's 53 pages. How wonderful. And Facebook is going to support the reading of the path forward because I know so many people have not even heard what Nevada's planning to do. And I haven't. So guess what? We're all going to listen together. We're going to select all this text. Select it all. Where's the select all? There we go. Yeah, well, we're not there yet. I don't think I'm there. Now we are. We're not here. Now we got to select the text. Select it all. And now we can begin to read speech.
Nevada Department of Education supporting students through federal relief funding. ARP-ESSER Planning Guide for LEAs. 2021 Nevada Path Forward Resource Guide Table of Contents Letter from the Superintendent of Public Instruction to document layout 4 funds background and overview 5 allocations 5 allowable uses of funds 6 planning best practices 7 equity as the focus 9 needs assessment 11 prioritize emergency needs 11 stakeholder engagement 11 evidence-based interventions, strategies, and activities 13 addressing interrupted learning 13 early childhood education 14 system priority closing opportunity gaps for students who have been traditionally underserved 15 system priority, access to technological capacity for educators, students, and families 21 system priority, social and emotional support of students.
Oh, what happened? We just have to do this again. Select the text. And then continue to read.
Nevada Department of Education supporting students through federal relief funding. ARP-ESSER Planning Guide for LEAs. 2021 Nevada Path Forward Resource Guide Table of Contents Letter from the Superintendent of Public Instruction 2 Document Layout 4 Funds Background and Overview 5 Allocations 5 Allowable Uses of Funds 6 Planning Best Practices 7 Equity as the Focus 9 Needs Assessment 11 Prioritize Emergency Needs 11 Stakeholder Engagement 11 Evidence-Based Interventions, Strategies, and Activities 13 Addressing Interrupted Learning 13 Early Childhood Education 14 System Priority Closing opportunity gaps for students who have been traditionally underserved 15 System priority, access to technological capacity for educators, students, and families 21 System priority, social and emotional support of students, educators, and staff in response to COVID-19 23 System priority, access to high-quality professional development for educators 32 System priority, access to high-quality instructional materials for educators and students 35 System priority, support of parents, families, and communities 37 System priority, access to adult education and workforce development opportunities 43 System priority, safe, efficient, and equitable reopening of school buildings 45 LEA Checklist 48 Appendix A, approved statewide projects to support students through federal relief funding 49 Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021 page 1 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward, Resource Guide Letter from the Superintendent of Public Instruction June 2021 Dear Nevada educators, families, and community members, since February 2020, the Nevada Department of Education, NDE, has been supporting districts and schools in responding to and recovering from COVID-19. Reflecting on the past 16 months inspires gratitude for the steadfast leadership of our district superintendents and school administrators, the determination and ingenuity of our educators and school staff, and the patience and dedication of our students and families. The 2020-21 school year was the second school year to be impacted by COVID-19, but it will not be the last. Looking ahead to the 2021-22 school year and beyond, we must shift from response and recovery to a focus on renewal, future-proofing our K-12 education system. This means doing what is suddenly possible and absolutely necessary to build an equitable education system that is inclusive of every student and every family across Nevada. The reason is simple: there is no excellence without equity. An urgent transformation is supported by 3 rounds of federal relief funding for Nevada K-12 education, totaling nearly $2 billion through the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security (CARES Act), the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations (CRRSA) Act, and the American Rescue Plan (ARP) Act. At the time of passage, each COVID-19 relief bill, CARES, CRRSA, and ARP, has included the single largest, most flexible federal investment in K-12 education in history. It is incumbent upon Nevada's education leaders to be responsible stewards of this unprecedented federal investment. I encourage district and school leaders to use this ARP-ESSER, Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Planning Guide as a resource to support strategic, equitable, and effective use of federal relief funds to meet the needs of students, staff, and families. As local education agencies (LEAs) design their plans for ARP-ESSER funds, you must be responsive to the unique academic, social, emotional, and mental health needs of Nevada's diverse student groups, and particularly those students who are traditionally underserved. NDE has prioritized extensive stakeholder engagement to ensure inclusivity in our state ARP-ESSER plan, hosting nearly 40 feedback sessions with hundreds of participants representing Nevada's cultural and geographic diversity, including students, educators, school and district staff, families, and community partners. The plan will also be available online for public comment. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021 page 2 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward, Resource Guide COVID-19 has brought challenges, but it has also demonstrated what we can accomplish when we marshal our collective resources and knowledge to create student-centered transformations of public education. NDE stands ready to support LEAS as they embark on the critical work of reimagining and transforming the future in partnership with their communities, and we look forward to working with local, state, and federal partners to make intentional investments in programs and practices that will create meaningful change for all students and close opportunity gaps for those most negatively impacted by COVID-19. Sincerely, Joan M. Eber, State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Nevada Department of Education. Last updated June 10, 2021, page 3 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward. Resource Guide Document Purpose and Goal. The purpose of the Supporting Students Through Federal Relief Funding, ARP-ESSER Planning Guide for LEAS. Planning Guide is to help local educational agencies, LEAS, make strategic decisions on how to equitably and effectively use ARP-ESSER, American Rescue Plan Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Funds to support students, families, staff, and educators. In addition, the Planning Guide may inform LEA's ongoing efforts to maximize funding available through the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security (CARES) Act and the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations (CRRSA) Act. The Planning Guide is not a directive, but rather an informational resource to support LEAS in planning for and completing the ARP-ESSER funding application, which closely aligns with the federally required ARP-ESSER funding plans that must be completed by LEAS. The Nevada Department of Education, NDE or Department, intends the Planning Guide to serve as a foundational resource from which LEAS can create, develop, and implement innovative and evidence-based plans to support students and school communities as we continue to respond to and recover from the impact of the coronavirus 2019 COVID-19 pandemic. As we shift from recovery to renewal for our education system, our goal is to provide support and interventions to students and families who have been the most adversely impacted by COVID-19. As always, spending decisions should be based on a meaningful assessment of current LEA, school, and community needs. Recognizing there will not be a one-size-fits-all solution, it is critical for LEAS to include the voices of students, families, staff, educators, and community members in their planning process to understand how to best serve our communities. The Planning Guide builds on the work from the Ed Research for Recovery Project. The Ed Research for Recovery Project taps top researchers from across the country who are aiming to provide pre-K-12 education decision-makers and advocates with an evidence base to drive discussions about how to best serve students during and following the COVID-19 pandemic. Document layout. The following pages provide context and background information regarding the uses of federal relief funds and important considerations for LEAS in planning for the uses of funds. This background information is followed by a toolkit, which includes research and evidence-based strategies and practices that align with the allowable uses of federal relief funds and NDE's system priorities. Appendix A of the document includes a summary of projects proposed by NDE for uses of statewide funds to support our ongoing recovery from COVID-19. These initiatives are included herein to prevent duplicative investments by LEAS. Nevada Department of Education. Last updated June 10, 2021, page 4 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward. Resource Guide Funds Background and Overview. The purpose of federal relief funds is to help state educational agencies seize and LEAS prevent, prepare for, and respond to the coronavirus pandemic. The CARES, CRRSA, and ARP Acts require the U.S. Department of Education used to allocate elementary and secondary school emergency relief (ESSER) funds based on the proportion that each LEA received under Title I, Part A of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965, ESEA, in the most recent fiscal year. For ESSER I, CARES purposes, The most recent fiscal year at the time was fiscal year 2019-20. For ESSER the second, CRRSA and NARP ESSER purposes, the most recent fiscal year was 2020-21. ESSER I awards were based on each LEA's 2019-20 Title I, Part A allocation, and ESSER the second and NARP ESSER awards were based on each LEA's 2020-21 Title I, Part A allocation. Although ESSER award amounts are calculated based on Title I, Part A allocations, they are not Title I, Part A funds. Title I requirements do not apply to ESSER funds. Allocations ESSER I. The total amount of ESSER I funds awarded to Nevada was $117,185,045. And SEA must allocate at least 90% of its total ESSER I fund by formula to LEAs. 90%, $105,466,540 of Nevada's ESSER I funds were allocated to LEAs, based on the proportion of Title I, Part A funds each LEA received in the most recent fiscal year at the time, 2019-20. ESSER the second. The total amount of ESSER the second funds awarded to Nevada was $477,322,438. And SEA must allocate at least 90% of its total ESSER the second fund grant by formula to LEAs. 90%, $429,590,194 of Nevada's ESSER the second funds were allocated to LEAs in the same way as ESSER I, based on the proportion of Title I, Part A funds each LEA received in the most recent fiscal year at the time, 2020-21. ARP ESSER. The total amount of ARP ESSER funds awarded to Nevada was $1,071,998,392. And SEA must allocate at least 90% of its total ESSER the third fund grant by formula to LEAs. 90%, $964,798,553 of Nevada's ARP ESSER funds were allocated to LEAs in the same way as ESSER I and ESSER the second, based on the proportion of Title I, Part A funds each LEA received in the most recent fiscal year at the time, 2020-21. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 5 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward Resource Guide. Allowable uses of funds. All ESSER-funded activities must be necessary to prevent, prepare for, or respond to COVID-19. ESSER funds are not subject to a supplement not supplant requirement. However, the use of ESSER funds does not override the supplement not supplant requirements of other programs. Replacing state or local funds with ESSER funds may result in future compliance findings. Below is a summary of the allowable uses of ESSER funds as determined by used. 1. Addressing learning loss through evidence-based improvements. 2. Addressing school facility repairs and improvements. 3. Planning for long-term closures, including providing meals to eligible students. 4. Addressing unique needs of special populations. 5. Purchasing educational technology, including hardware, software, and connectivity. 6. Any activity authorized by SEA, IDEA, McKinney-Vento, Perkins, etc. 7. Coordinate local education agencies with state, local, tribal, and territorial efforts with departments of health and other relevant agencies to prevent, prepare, and respond to COVID-19. 8. Providing social and emotional mental health services. 9. Providing summer learning and supplemental after-school programs, including online learning. 10. Conducting other activities necessary to maintain the operation of services, employ existing staff, increase instructional hours that were reduced due to COVID-19, and coordinate activities. 11. Purchase cleaning supplies to sanitize and clean facilities. 12. Train staff on sanitation to minimize the spread of infectious disease. 13. Procedures to improve school preparedness and response systems of LEAs. 14. administrative expenses which represent an increase over previously budgeted amounts that are necessary, reasonable, and allowable, and 15. Indirect costs using the negotiated restricted rate. To read the exact text description of allowable activities in law, please see Section 18003D of CARES, starting on page 285 for SRIA. Section 313D of CRRSA, starting on page 749 for SR the second, and Section 2001E of ARP, starting on page 17 for ARP-SR, Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 6 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward Resource Guide. The U.S. Department of Education used release of frequently asked questions document related to ARP-SR in May 2021. In addition, the Council of Chief State School Officers maintains a fact sheet comparing the 3 rounds of federal relief funding for education that may be of support to LEAs. Please note, USED has noted that ESSER funds may be used for the same allowable purposes. The additional allowable uses of funds enumerated under CRRSA, addressing learning loss, preparing schools for reopening, and testing, repairing, and upgrading projects to improve air quality in school buildings were inherently permitted under CARES and ARP, even if not enumerated. For ARP-ESSER, an LEA must reserve not less than 20% of its total allocation to address learning loss, referred to by NDE as interrupted learning, through the implementation of evidence-based interventions, such as summer learning or summer enrichment, extended day, comprehensive after-school programs, or extended school year programs, and ensure that such interventions respond to students' academic, social, and emotional needs and address the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on underrepresented student groups. When USED awarded ESSER funds to states, it noted that funds generally will not be used for bonuses, merit pay, or similar expenditures, unless related to disruptions or closures resulting from COVID-19. This does not mean all bonuses, merit pay, or similar expenditures are unallowable, only those unrelated to COVID-related disruptions or closures. Planning best practices. This section provides an overview of existing statewide priorities for COVID-19 response and recovery, as well as identifies key approaches and lenses for LEAs to consider as they begin to develop ARP-ESSER funding plans. State Educational Agency Priorities. NDE is committed to supporting students, families, educators, and staff throughout this challenging time. In partnership with the Nevada State Board of Education, NDE has established the following statewide priorities for our COVID-19 response and recovery, which continue to guide our funding decisions. Closing opportunity gaps for students who have been traditionally underserved. Safe, efficient, and equitable reopening of school buildings. Access to technological capacity for educators, students, and families. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 7 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward Resource Guide. Social and emotional support of students, educators, and staff. Access to high-quality professional development for educators. Access to high-quality instructional materials for educators and students. Support of parents, families, and communities, and access to adult education and workforce development opportunities. The statewide priorities align with the enumerated uses of funds provided by USED as follows. USED NDE Priorities Crosswalk. USED Priorities NDE State Priorities 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 8, 1, 2, 3, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Closing opportunity gaps for students who have been traditionally underserved. Social emotional support of students, educators, and staff in response to COVID-19. Access to high-quality instructional materials for educators and students. Safe, efficient, and equitable reopening of school buildings. 5. Access to technological capacity for educators, students, and families. 4. 6. Access to high-quality professional development for educators. 6. 7. 8. Support of parents, families, and communities. 6. Access to adult education and workforce development. Some used priorities crosswalk with multiple NDE priorities. Leads are encouraged to determine the best fit based on a specific purpose. Used priorities. Key 1. Addressing learning loss through evidence-based improvements. 3. Planning for long-term closures, including providing meals to eligible students. 5. Purchasing educational technology, including hardware, software, and connectivity. Nevada Department of Education. Last updated June 10, 2021. Page 8 of 52. Used priorities. Definition. 2. Addressing school facility repairs and improvements. 4. Addressing unique needs of special populations. 6. Any activity authorized by ESEA, IDEA, McKinney-Vento, Perkins, etc. 2021 Nevada Path Forward Resource Guide 9. Providing summer learning and supplemental after-school programs, including online learning. 11. Purchase cleaning supplies to sanitize and clean facilities. 13. Procedures to improve school preparedness and response systems of LEAs. 15. Indirect costs using the negotiated restricted rate. Federal relief funds can be allocated by the LEA to benefit all students and schools or be tailored to select students and schools, depending on local needs. LEAs are encouraged to focus on equity and consider investing in high-impact activities such as academic recovery and accelerated learning initiatives, including extended time or extended year initiatives, changing school master schedules to promote accelerated learning and access to effective teachers, and high-quality high-dose tutoring. Health and safety initiatives that permit students and staff to safely return to school in person. High-quality, evidence-based literacy initiatives, and high-quality instructional materials to address learning loss or accelerate learning. Equity is the focus. NDE defines educational equity to mean that the learning needs of every student are supported in an environment where all students are valued, respected, and see themselves in their curriculum and instructional materials while experiencing academic success without regard to differences in age, gender, socioeconomic status, religion, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, ability, native language, national origin, or citizenship status. Nevada Department of Education. Last updated June 10, 2021. Page 9 of 52. Used priorities. Definition. 7. Coordinate local education agencies with state, local, tribal, and territorial efforts with departments of health and other relevant agencies to prevent, prepare, and respond to COVID-19. 8. Providing social and emotional mental health services. 10. Conducting other activities necessary to maintain the operation of services. Employ existing staff, increase instructional hours that were reduced due to COVID-19, and coordinate activities. 12. Train staff on sanitation to minimize the spread of infectious disease. 14. Administrative expenses which represent an increase over previously budgeted amounts that are necessary, reasonable, and allowable, and 2021 Nevada Path Forward Resource Guide. The Federal Every Student Succeeds Act (ESSA), signed into law in 2015, empowered states to create accountability systems that promote equity by ensuring that students who have historically been underserved by education systems receive a high-quality education. Building on ESSA, ARP-ESSA expectations address equity by asking LEAs in their funding plans to ensure that the interventions it implements will respond to the academic, social, emotional, and mental health needs of all students, and particularly those students disproportionately impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, including students from low-income families, students of color, students who are English learners, children with disabilities, students experiencing homelessness, children in foster care, and migratory students. ARP-ESSA is unique among the 3 federal relief statutes due to the addition of a Maintenance of Equity requirement, ARP Act Section 2004, which applies to LEAs as follows. As a condition of receiving ARP-ESSER funds, a LEA shall not, in fiscal year 2022 or 2023, reduce per pupil funding from combined state and local funding for any high-poverty school served by such local educational agency by an amount that exceeds the total reduction in local educational agency funding from combined state and local funding for all schools served by the local educational agency in such fiscal year, if any, divided by 2. The number of children enrolled in all schools served by the local educational agency in such fiscal year, or be reduced per pupil, full-time equivalent staff in any high-poverty school by an amount that exceeds the total reduction in full-time equivalent staff in all schools served by such local educational agency in such fiscal year, if any, divided by 2. The number of children enrolled in all schools served by the local educational agency in such fiscal year. The maintenance of equity provision does not apply to LEAs that have a total enrollment of less than 1,000 students, operate a single school, serve all students within each grade span within a single school, or demonstrate an exceptional or uncontrollable circumstance, such as unpredictable changes in student enrollment or a precipitous decline in financial resources, as determined by the U.S. Secretary of Education, Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 10 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward Resource Guide Needs Assessment. NDE encourages LEAs to complete a rigorous needs assessment, or review and update as needed a recent and relevant needs assessment to determine how their portion of ESSER funds will be used. A needs assessment helps identify barriers and challenges that are preventing the LEA from meeting the goals it has identified. A needs assessment includes a review of the current state of education in the LEA as compared to the desired state, the identification of barriers to reaching the desired state, and an analysis of the potential sources of the identified barriers. Further, an LEA needs assessment should include analysis of LEA data, quantitative and qualitative, and a root cause analysis to determine the most valuable and tailored use of ESSER funds. Moreover, it also is best practice to include a wide range and diverse set of stakeholder voices in the needs assessment and planning process. Prioritize emergency needs. LEAs should remain mindful that ESSER funds are emergency, one-time funds meant to overcome circumstances created by the COVID-19 pandemic. LEAs should prioritize existing emergency needs and consider potential future needs to be prepared for similar emergencies during their planning process. While ESSER funds do not have supplement not supplant requirements, NDE considers it best practice to use federal funds to supplement existing state and local funds and encourages LEAs to work within their established supplement not supplant methodologies. The use of ESSER funds does not override the supplement not supplant requirements of other federal programs, and replacing state or local funds with ESSER funds may result in future compliance findings. For example, replacing local funds with ESSER funds to support the delivery of special education programs may result in an LEA failing to meet the maintenance of effort (MOE) compliance requirements of IDEA. While LEAs may use ESSER funds to support the delivery of special education, this should only be done to supplement the use of state and local funds already allocated to the program. When planning for the use of ESSER funds, LEAs should consider if similar implications exist related to other federal programs. Stakeholder engagement. Meaningful stakeholder engagement is critical to LEAs' ability to understand and build plans that equitably and effectively address the unique needs of their local community. Used Interim Final Rule (IFR) regarding ARP-ESSER requires that LEAs engage with stakeholders in the development of their ARP-ESSER plans as follows. An LEA must engage in meaningful consultation with stakeholders and give the public an opportunity to provide input in the development of its plan. Specifically, an LEA must engage in meaningful consultation with Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 11 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward Resource Guide. Students, families, school and district administrators, including special education administrators, and teachers, principals, school leaders, other educators, school staff, and their unions. Additionally, an LEA must engage in meaningful consultation with each of the following, to the extent present in or served by the LEA: tribes, civil rights organizations, including disability rights organizations, and stakeholders representing the interests of children with disabilities, English learners, children experiencing homelessness, children in foster care, migratory students, children who are incarcerated, and other underserved students. In addition, the IFR requires that LEARP-ESER plans must be in an understandable and uniform format, to the extent practicable, written in a language that parents can understand or, if not practicable, orally translated, and, upon request by a parent who is an individual with a disability, provided in an alternative format accessible to that parent. NBE is also required to conduct meaningful stakeholder engagement in the development of the state ARP-ESER plan. NDE developed a strategy for engaging with a broad group of stakeholders that may be of support to LEAs in designing their approach. NDE staff leading the implementation of federal relief funds and related projects created an ARP-ESER in a box kit for subject matter experts to use in various stakeholder engagements. The kit included meeting invite language, a slide deck, talking points, and meeting follow-up details for NDE subject matter experts to share with NDE's existing advisory groups as well as additional partners and communities. Subject matter experts repurposed existing meetings for ARP-ESER presentations when practicable or convened additional meetings as necessary to collect feedback in a timely fashion. A member of the NBE Federal Relief Fund implementation staff sits in on the listening sessions led by subject matter experts and takes notes. The notes are summarized and input into a survey form. The information from the survey form will be compiled and reconciled to inform the final state ARP-ESER plan. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 12 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward Resource Guide. This approach has allowed NTE to take advantage of its existing and expanding partner networks to collect meaningful feedback from a broad set of stakeholders within the limited time allowed by federal expectations. Evidence-based interventions, strategies, and activities. Evidence-based interventions, strategies, and activities utilize outcome data as a way to determine effectiveness, ensuring equitable outcomes for all students. They demonstrate a statistically significant effect on improving student outcomes or other relevant outcomes. Investing in evidence-based interventions maximizes returns on investment and promotes continuous improvement, and LEAs in schools can increase the return on their investments of funds by spending their funding on what has been proven to be effective. When selecting evidence-based interventions, LEAs and schools should pay specific attention to how their local context and needs compare with and contrast to the setting in which the intervention was demonstrated to be effective. In addition, when implementing evidence-based strategies in a new setting or implementing new programs, it is recommended that LEAs plan for investing in robust evaluations and transparently sharing results to help develop strong evidence of impact. This using evidence to strengthen education investments. Non-regulatory guidance from the U.S. Department of Education shares some key steps in helping LEAs and schools select, implement and review interventions that improve outcomes for students. Moreover, the Intervention Evidence Review Tool guides the review and comparison of interventions that target an identified need, and the Comparing Evidence-Based Interventions tool guides the determination about the degree to which a particular intervention aligns with a given context. Further, this LEA guidance for evidence-based interventions helps LEAs reflect on how they will provide guidance to their schools on evidence-based interventions. Lastly, Nevada's Evidence-Based Interventions for School Transformation list can be a helpful resource for schools and LEAs to identify partners that can help provide supports to improve student outcomes. Addressing interrupted learning. One of the key intentions of the federal relief funds is addressing interrupted learning, referred to in federal guidance as learning loss, a theme that is carried through in the system priorities. To determine the strategies that will be used to address interrupted learning, LEAs will need to evaluate the physical, social, and emotional needs of their needs students and fundamentally shift their instructional approach so every student is on a fast track back to grade level. NTE knows that LEAs share our top priority of ensuring the safety and social-emotional well-being of students and staff. As some students may be returning to school buildings for in-person instruction in August 2021 for the first time since March 2020, understanding and addressing their social-emotional needs must be a top priority. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 13 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward Resource Guide. As LEAs develop plans for the use of ARP-ESSER funds, schools will also need help in ensuring that students have access to grade-appropriate assignments, strong instruction, deep engagement, and teachers with high expectations to minimize the impact of interrupted learning. Providing students with challenging, engaging school experiences that can accelerate them back to grade level will help schools meet the critical challenge of addressing interrupted learning. Accelerated learning requires that students consistently receive grade-level materials, tasks, and assignments, along with appropriate scaffolds that make the work accessible. The typical approach to remediation unfortunately guarantees students will lose more academic ground this coming school year and reinforces misguided beliefs that some students will never do grade-level work. Shifting from remediation to acceleration requires a better approach, not by providing content or teaching faster, but by using instructional strategies that can help all students grapple with grade-appropriate content. Early childhood education. The COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted both the fragility and importance of early education and child care providers, with serious, widespread consequences and unprecedented changes for children and families. Overall, these disruptions and changes in daily life for families associated with the COVID-19 pandemic have affected child well-being and learning. Studies are starting to reveal that some children are showing signs of strain themselves, e.g., regression, behavioral challenges, sleep disruption, signaling the need for more support. Young children are among those who are most negatively impacted by remote learning because they are still developing the self-regulation and attention skills needed to benefit from online instruction, and because early childhood education provides students with foundational literacy and numeracy skills. Prioritizing young students to receive face-to-face instruction, when possible, can help mitigate academic risks to this age group. LEAs should also focus on working with experts and stakeholders to support families and children transitioning into kindergarten through collaborative planning and communication with community-based early childhood programs and other community organizations serving the 0-5-year-old population. Toolkit. This toolkit section of the planning guide includes evidence-based strategies and practices for LEAs to consider for their use of ESSER funds. The toolkit is organized to align with NBE's system priorities, which align with the allowable uses of ESSER funds as demonstrated in the crosswalk above. The toolkit also contains additional considerations for LEAs as they shift from COVID-19 recovery to renewal. The following strategies were informed by the work of the Ed Research for Recovery project and the input of NTE subject matter experts. The hyperlinks in the toolkit lead to additional resources for LEAs to navigate. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 14 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward Resource Guide System Priority Closing Opportunity Gaps for Students Who Have Been Traditionally Underserved. Central question: recognizing long-standing educational inequities, what research-backed practices can district administrators, school leaders, and classroom teachers used to support traditionally underserved students' academic success and development in an instructional context transformed by COVID-19? How can LEAs, school leaders, and classroom teachers intentionally and strategically identify students with the highest needs? Strategy brief description of practice S design considerations general best practices. Enhancing services and supports for students with the highest needs. Invite community mental health providers to support students virtually and/or on-site at schools. Provide academic coaching and in-person enrichment opportunities. Ensure counselors can assist with credit recovery, SB 147, FAFSA completion, and college transition. Offer teachers extra paid hours to provide individual academic support to students, to do weekly check-ins by text or other platforms outside of class, and to provide weekly attendance certificates and other incentives to promote attendance. Provide socially distanced on-site academic opportunities at school buildings and/or in the community. Offer transportation to all available in-person enrichment opportunities. Enhance communication options with students and families. Develop flyers, posters, and other outreach throughout the community, e.g. hotels, motels regarding services and supports available. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 15 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward, Resource Guide Strategy brief description of practice S design considerations. Increase counseling and social work services. Take extra steps to ensure students of color have access to mental health support as they are less likely to reach out to teachers or counselors. Also, ensure mental health providers are LGBTQ+ positive and offer online resources sensitive to the challenges of LGBTQ+. Schools that engage in ongoing training of instructional and non-instructional staff, including pre-K, including training on trauma-informed practices, available socio-emotional resources, and anti-racist, critical pedagogical practices, may be better positioned to foster a climate where students and families feel comfortable self-identifying. Increase Nevada Ready State pre-K seats. Investing in early care and education is important because the circumstances of the first 1,000 days of a child's life can change the course of their future. Focusing on an equity-centered strategy of increasing enrollment of children from families experiencing poverty in state pre-K is important because we know that children of color are the students who disproportionately bear the burden of poverty due to inequitable systems. Follow Nevada Ready State Pre-K quality requirements, outlined in NRS 387.652. Consider providing transportation to in-person learning opportunities to increase access to preschool, Head Start, or other early learning programs, if not currently available. Maintain low kindergarten classroom teacher-student ratio. With declines in kindergarten enrollment this past school year as a result of the pandemic, LEAs should plan for the possibility of higher than normal enrollment in kindergarten and either add kindergarten classrooms or provide a teaching aid to maintain a lower teacher-student ratio. Follow the National Association for the Education of Young Children's NAEYC guidance for appropriate early childhood class ratios 1:12 with a maximum class size of 24 students for a kindergarten classroom. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 16 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward, Resource Guide Strategy brief description of practice S design considerations high dosage tutoring. Rigorous research provides strong evidence that high dosage tutoring can produce large learning gains for a wide range of students, including those who have fallen behind academically. Tutoring programs may exacerbate educational inequalities if schools do not take an active role in connecting students who could benefit from tutoring with tutors. Tutoring is most likely to be effective when delivered in high doses through tutoring programs with 3 or more sessions per week or intensive, week-long, small group programs taught by talented teachers.
consistent progress monitoring that is based on student output and student outcomes. Tutors can effectively instruct up to 3 or 4 students at a time. However, moving beyond this number can quickly become small group instruction, which is less personalized and requires a higher degree of skill to do well. The skills required for tutoring are different from the skills required for effective classroom teaching. A wide variety of tutors, including volunteers and college students, can successfully improve student outcomes if they receive adequate training and ongoing support. Tutoring programs that support data use and ongoing informal assessments allow tutors to more effectively tailor their instruction for individual students. Ensuring students have a consistent tutor over time may facilitate positive tutor-student relationships and a stronger understanding of students' learning needs. Tutoring specifically designed for remote and hybrid learners. Embracing cultural and linguistic assets. Concrete steps to embrace the cultural and linguistic assets of English learners, ELs, students, families, and communities can lead to higher levels of trust and encouraging families to draw upon their native language can promote EL students' academic success not only in their native language, but in English as well. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 17 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward, Resource Guide Strategy Brief Description of Practice S. Design Considerations Engagement among all stakeholders and improve students' academic identity and achievement. Since higher order language comprehension and literacy skills transfer from one language to another. Home literacy programs. Family engagement programs that focus on bridging home literacy in students' native languages have been found to hold promise for EL students. Consistent family-friendly communication, including text messages, with EL students and families, including pre-K in their home language, can increase in-home support on assignments and improve family-school connections. Collaboration between EL and general education teachers. Continuous professional learning, inquiry, and collaboration between EL and general education teachers can improve instruction for EL students. Liaison school leadership can establish norms around collaboration between EL and general education teachers, including pre-K, by allocating specific co-planning time and setting clear co-teaching expectations. Online professional development and virtual learning communities specifically aimed at supporting EL students can improve teacher and paraprofessional capacity for serving EL students. High-quality instructional resources for ELs. High-quality instructional resources designed specifically for EL students, coupled with carefully selected technologies, can increase student achievement and language proficiency. High-quality lessons and learning resources aligned to state standards, including pre-K, and designed to appropriately integrate language development and grade-level content learning can increase EL student performance. Translations, intentional vocabulary development, and use of definitions and cognates can enhance language development and allow ELs to access grade-level lessons. Use of digital learning resources specifically designed for EL students allows ELs to practice and apply all language modalities, e.g., listening, speaking, reading. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 18 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward, Resource Guide Strategy Brief Description of Practice S. Design Considerations Writing across content areas, which can increase academic language proficiency and overall achievement. Extended learning time. Additional funding for EL students can be invested in key strategies such as extended learning time and small group tutoring. Extended learning time outside of regular school hours or during the summer is especially helpful to EL students, including pre-K. After-school programs that focus on building connections like reading buddies can allow ELs of different ages to connect, build community, mentor and be mentored, and generally feel welcome at school. These programs are especially beneficial for newcomer ELs. Increasing opportunities to work one-on-one or in small groups with teachers, paraprofessionals, or tutors in virtual settings can provide an additional boost for EL students. Children and youth experiencing homelessness. Due to stigma, fear, racism, and inconsistent understandings of their rights, students and families are often reluctant or unable to self-identify as homeless. The goal of McKinney-Vento is to ensure that children and youth who experience homelessness have equal access to the same free, appropriate public education afforded to other children and youth. Identification is key to connecting students and families to resources efficiently. Prioritize proactive identification and consider fostering an environment that frames policy supports as rights for students. Proactively provide opportunities for family members to update housing forms during the year at parent-teacher conferences or by backpacking forms home. Specialized instructional support personnel, SISP, such as school social workers, can also support identification through proactive outreach to families about their housing situation. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 19 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward, Resource Guide Strategy Brief Description of Practice S Design Considerations. LEAs using online enrollment and best practices such as telephone and safe in-person alternatives may reduce barriers. Provide prepaid cell phones for youth and parents. Kansas City Public Schools purchased phones with 1- and 2-year contracts for McKinney-Vento High School seniors. This will connect hard-to-reach students, allow for more accurate data, and address learning loss. Offer early childhood education services for young children experiencing homelessness. Provide transportation to existing in-person options. Increase capacity in preschool, Head Start, and early intervention programs. Collaborations and data sharing with community providers. Collaborations and data sharing with community providers can improve identification of students experiencing homelessness or any other life issue, and ease access to resources and supports for families. Relationships with community providers can ease information sharing and delivery of services. Building relationships with community providers can help meet service needs, including needs of children enrolled in pre-K and their families, while minimizing duplication. These relationships may take a wide variety of forms, ranging from referrals or broader models of wraparound services or community schools. Strategies and practices to avoid brief description and reasoning diverting funds. Even prior to the financial strain caused by the pandemic, there have been concerns about districts diverting funding earmarked for traditionally underserved students to other uses. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 20 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward, Resource Guide Strategies to Avoid Brief Description and Reasoning. In setting budget priorities during the pandemic, it is critical to keep equity in mind to ensure the needs of all students are met. Only translating content. Researchers have shown that merely translating content alone is insufficient support for EL students and families. It is also important for educators to unpack and explain the expectations and norms of schools for families. Low-dosage tutoring. Tutoring interventions often are not successful when there are no minimum dosage requirements, little oversight, and minimal connections with the student's schools. Studies have found little evidence that once-a-week tutoring is sufficient to generate meaningful effects. System priority, access to technological capacity for educators, students, and families. Central question: how can access and building the capacity of educators, students, and families support teaching and learning? How can equitable access to connectivity and devices be obtained, and how can LEAs identify digital divide gaps? Strategy brief description of practice S design considerations building families' capacity. building the capacity of families to learn how to navigate and use commonly used technology and platforms in schools, especially for families of early learners. Capacity building opportunities for families should be provided in their preferred language. Consider partnering with trusted community-based organizations to provide technology support and digital literacy training for families in their home language. Parent University. University of Family Learning building educators' capacity. Extensive professional development opportunities for educators that support improvements in instructional design and empower them to effectively use technology to support student learning. Research shows technology is most effective when it is integrated into instruction, and activities are designed by teachers for students to explore, learn, and create. Have educators use technology in ways that support students who are performing at different levels, which may be an even more common occurrence when students return to in-person instruction, in part by Nevada Department of Education. Last updated June 10, 2021, page 21 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward, Resource Guide Strategy Brief Description of Practice S Design Considerations Leveraging technology to support one-on-one or small group work with students and by using student-centered learning models, e.g., competency-based education, project-based learning, universal design for learning. Digital divide. Students participating in distance or hybrid models will need access to tools, supplies, and equipment to develop needed skills outside the classroom. The digital divide affects households that cannot get broadband internet access or, as schools move activities to virtual platforms due to the COVID-19 pandemic, many families face even more barriers to communicating with teachers and school leaders. Set clear goals and aggressive timelines for providing all students with access to high-speed broadband devices and accessible technology they can use when school is not in session. Districts and schools should conduct ongoing needs assessments, including through the use of surveys, to determine the extent to which students have access to high-speed internet and devices and the quality of that access. For example, it is important to know whether a student only has home access through a cellular data. Continue distribution of digital devices that are consistent, reliable, and sustainable for students' education needs. Offer training and support to educators, students, and families in digital literacy and citizenship. Invest in robust community engagement programs, such as ongoing community-led digital equity studies and resources for school district capacity to support students, families, and educators. Nevada Department of Education. Last updated June 10, 2021, page 22 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward, Resource Guide Strategies and Practices to avoid brief description and reasoning. If we build it, they will come. The availability of internet connection and devices is not enough to ensure educators, students, and families will be able to access or obtain them. These need to be intentional and strategic in identifying and supporting individuals who need access to internet and/or devices. System priority: social and emotional support of students, educators, and staff in response to COVID-19 central questions. How can leaders in schools monitor and support students and educators' social, emotional, and mental health needs? Strategy brief description of practice S design considerations coordinate and integrate student supports through an MTSS framework. An LEA may use ESSER and geared funds, including the 20% of ARP ESSER funds set aside to address the academic impact of lost instructional time, to support students' social, emotional, mental health, and academic needs, including by implementing school-wide strategies that enhance supports and interventions for students as well as targeted assistance for students who need such supports. CC3 School-wide strategies should include the use of indicators to identify students in need of targeted support and services, as well as more generally for identifying which students have lost the greatest number of in-person instructional days since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. CC 23. Other examples of school-wide strategies include the creation of early warning systems based on key student indicators, including chronic absenteeism, credit. NVE's Office for a Safe and Respectful Learning Environment and the Nevada PBIS Technical Assistance Center provide resources and supports to leads throughout the state on implementing and sustaining multi-tiered system of supports, MTSS approaches. NRS 388.885 outlines the requirements of the statewide framework for providing and coordinating integrated student supports. Using NVE's guidance on MTSS, consider the use of integrated student support systems that are tailored to meet the unique needs of students through a multi-tiered approach, including the use of data for decision-making and progress monitoring, to address intensive social, emotional, and mental health needs. The National Center on Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports, PBIS, also provides many Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 23 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward, Resource Guide Strategy Brief Description of Practice S Design Considerations Accumulation, Course Grades, and Discipline Rates, to identify students who are at risk of dropping out of school. CC 11. Evidence-based community school approaches include integrated student supports, active family and community engagement, expanded learning time opportunities, and collaborative leadership and practices. CC 13. Resources on school-wide strategies, including the use of indicators and early warning systems. Implementation of integrated student support frameworks requires that special attention be paid to fidelity, within an implementation science perspective, to increase expected benefits and outcomes through more efficient and effective approaches. More information on full-service community schools is provided by the USED's Office of Elementary and Secondary Education. Implement evidence-based SEL activities.
Not the harbor.
In implementing evidence-based strategies to address the academic impact of lost instructional time through the ARP-ESSER required reservation of funds, Cs and LEs must respond to students' social and emotional needs and address the disproportionate impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. CA 10. ESSER and geared funds may be used to support implementation of curriculum to support the social, emotional, mental health, and academic needs of students. CC 3. Effective summer programming can address students' social and emotional needs through a combination of activities that include strong partnerships with community-based organizations and other summer providers, including summer camps. CC 25. LEs may also use ESSER and geared funds to develop or implement an innovative approach that demonstrates a rationale based on high-quality research findings or the State Board of Education has adopted SEL competencies, and NTE's Office for a Safe and Respectful Learning Environment provides a host of resources, training, and supports on social, emotional, and academic development, SEAD. Research has shown that teaching and practicing SEL skills with fidelity leads to a number of positive outcomes and benefits. The core elements of a PBIS program and MTSS approach provide an ideal framework by which to model, integrate, and explicitly teach SEL skills. The Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, CASEL, provides a comprehensive resource library and review of universal evidence-based SEL and SEAD programs. The Aspen Institute National Commission on SEAD has compiled a number of resources and reports. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 24 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward, Resource Guide Strategy Brief Description of Practice S. Design Considerations Positive evaluation that such activity, strategy, or intervention is likely to improve student outcomes or other relevant outcomes, and includes ongoing efforts to examine the effects of such activity, strategy, or intervention. CA 22. The U.S. Eds What Works Clearinghouse identifies the tier of evidence that reviewed studies meet as applicable. The American Institute for Research, AIR, provides key resources for selecting the right evidence-based practice. The USED has issued non-regulatory guidance on using evidence to strengthen education investments that may be useful as well. Developing a logic model can also help clarify goals and demonstrate a rationale for selected evidence-based programs and practices.
Right.
Implement evidence-based mental health activities. In implementing evidence-based strategies to address the academic impact of lost instructional time through the ARP-ESSER required reservation of funds, Cs and Ls must respond to students' mental health needs and address the disproportionate impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. CA 10. ESSER and geared funds may be used to provide, in particular, mental health supports to address the impacts of isolation during this period. CC 23. Many schools already implementing multi-tiered supports may integrate mental health strategies and interventions into these existing systems. CC 14. Funds may be used to provide resources and information to students and families to provide a greater understanding of mental health and address any stigma. The Mental Health Technology Transfer Center Network, MHTTC, which is funded by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA, provides an extensive resource catalog across a variety of mental health issues and concerns. SAMHSA also hosts an evidence-based practices resource center specific to improving prevention, treatment, and recovery support services for mental and substance use disorders. The National Association of Social Workers, NASW, provides a definition of evidence-based mental health treatment as well as an overview of national resources on mental health. More information on providing safe and supportive learning environments, including addressing Student Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 25 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward, Resource Guide Strategy Brief Description of Practice S. Design Considerations associated with mental health that may be a barrier to accessing services even when available. CC 14. Effective summer programming can address students' mental health needs through a combination of activities that include strong partnerships with community-based organizations and other summer providers, including summer camps. CC 25 and Educator Mental Health is available at the National Center on Safe and Supportive Learning Environments website. Evidence-based practices specific to school-based mental health services are available from the School Social Work Association of America, SSWAA. Information on mental health disorders, in addition to a host of other helpful resources on mental health, is also available online through the National Association of School Psychologists, NASP. The National Institute of Mental Health, NIMH, includes information on child and adolescent mental health concerns, warning signs, and resources by topic, provide increased access to mental health services and support to students. An LEA may hire additional personnel to prioritize student well-being and health by increasing student access to teachers, nurses, guidance counselors, social workers, and other support personnel, including consideration of use of funds in ways that will build its short and long-term capacity and be sustained after the funding is no longer available. CC 3 and D2. ESSER and geared funds may be used to evaluate students who may have a disability under IDEA and Section 504, including those who have mental health-related needs as a result of their disability. CC 14. LEAs may utilize funds in the development or expansion of in-school student support centers that provide mentoring, counseling, and social and emotional The State Board of Education has adopted non-binding recommended ratios for specialized instructional support personnel, SISP, in accordance with national accepted best practice ratios, and has highlighted existing shortages. NRS 388.890 defines SISP to include school counselors, psychologists, social workers, nurses, and any other qualified professional. The website of NTE's Office of Educator Licensure includes information on the requirements for licensed school social workers, school mental health workers, school counselors, and school psychologists. Strategies to recruit and retain SISP can be found on the websites of national organizations for SISP, including the School Social Work Association of Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 26 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward Resource Guide Strategy Brief Description of Practice S Design Considerations Learning Supports to Students in Individual or Group Sessions. CC 13. Consider providing information, translation services, mental health services, and other forms of supports to migratory children and their family members or caregivers. CC 9. ESSER and geared funds may also be used to provide student access to online counseling services and other mental health supports. CC 14 America, the American School Counselor Association, and the National Association of School Psychologists. For resources on Nevada Medicaid and the State Plan Amendment for School-Based Health Services, including information on billing consortia for small-sized LEAs, please contact Director Christy McGill of NTE's Office for a Safe and Respectful Learning Environment at cmcgill@do.nv.gov. Evidence-based approaches to stabilizing the educator workforce are described in Volume 2 of the U.S. Ed's COVID-19 Handbook. Address the disproportionate impact on vulnerable learners. LEAs must ensure that the interventions implemented respond to students' social, emotional, mental health, and academic needs and address the disproportionate impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on students from low-income families, students of color, children with disabilities, English learners, migratory students, students experiencing homelessness, and children and youth in foster care. CC2. LEAs should also work to ensure that schools are implementing instructional practices that are culturally responsive in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. CC3. Regarding services to support children with disabilities, ESSER and geared funds may be used to. CC5. Consider incorporating a restorative approach in providing social, emotional, and mental health services to students who have been disproportionately impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, including through the use of an MTSS framework. Restorative Resources provides an online educator toolkit that may be helpful. Wested has provided an updated research review of restorative justice in U.S. schools. Consider the ways in which a positive school climate can support a safe and equitable return to in-person learning post-pandemic. The use of school climate surveys, including the Nevada School Climate Social-Emotional Learning (NVSCSEL) survey, can be helpful in identifying disproportionate experiences of students across populations of learners. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 27 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward Resource Guide Strategy Brief Description of Practice S Design Considerations. 1. Provide developmentally appropriate positive behavioral interventions and supports in mental health services. 2. Provide additional instruction and services to students with Section 504 plans who are not IDEA eligible, including compensatory services. See also C6. LEAs with high concentrations of English learners may hire additional bilingual staff to address the social, emotional, mental health, and academic needs of English learners. CC3. ESSER and geared funds may be used to address needs of migratory children by providing mental health services and other forms of social, emotional, and behavioral support for migratory children. CC9. An LEA may use ESSER and geared funds to ensure that all students experiencing homelessness, CC7, 1, are provided services and interventions specifically tailored to meet their needs, for example through mental health services and positive behavioral interventions and supports. 2. Have access to counselors, social workers, and others who are specifically trained in outreach and services for these students by increasing specialized support staffing. For students in foster care, CC8, schools can provide supports in building student resilience to help mitigate the impact of adversities and rise above the challenges they face. The National Center on Intensive Intervention includes resources and strategies for supporting intensifying behavioral interventions as well as a robust resource library. Links to guidance and resources specific to COVID-19 and English learners, including resources available in Spanish, are provided online by NVE. NVE's Office of Student and School Supports provides technical assistance and access to resources for supporting migratory children, in accordance with USAID's Migrant Education Program. Education of homeless children and youth information and resources can be found on NVE's website under the Office of Student and School Supports. Additional resources for supporting students who are homeless can be found online through the National Center for Homeless Education. Shoe House Connection is a national nonprofit organization to support unaccompanied youth, with online information and resources, including those specific to COVID-19 and homelessness. NVE's foster care webpage is designed to support interested stakeholders of important foster care. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 28 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward, Resource Guide Strategy Brief Description of Practice S Design Considerations. 1. LEAs should coordinate with local child welfare agencies to identify and meet the rising mental health and behavioral needs of these students. 2. LEAs may wish to contract with community mental health providers as well as increase access to school-based/on-site mental health providers. Information related to education, including numerous resources and supports. The Education Commission of the States has provided a policy brief on support for students in foster care. A foster care transition toolkit produced by the USAID's Students in Foster Care program includes guidance geared specifically to youth who will be aging out of foster systems. Communities and Schools Nevada works with LEAs and schools to provide individualized supports to help students graduate on time, prepare for college, career and life. Incorporate trauma-informed pedagogy. LEAs should also work to ensure that schools are implementing instructional practices that incorporate trauma-informed pedagogy in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. CC3. LEAs may use ESSER and geared funds to provide mental health services and supports for students and their families, teachers, and LEA staff who are experiencing COVID-19 pandemic-related trauma, including students who are experiencing trauma prior to the pandemic that may have been exacerbated by the pandemic. CC14. NVE's Office for a Safe and Respectful Learning Environment manages a federal grant from USED to expand and deliver mental health services to students who have experienced trauma and are uninsured or underinsured. The National Child Traumatic Stress Network, NCTSN, provides a host of valuable training and resources on trauma, including those specific to schools and trauma, as well as resources and information in Spanish. Information on trauma-informed practices and education can be found online through WSTET's extensive resource library. The National Center on Safe Supportive Learning Environments has additional guidance and resources on supporting trauma recovery for students. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 29 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward Resource Guide Strategy Brief Description of Practice S. Design Considerations address school safety, crisis, and emergency mental health needs. Community Violence Intervention (CVI) strategies address students' social, emotional, mental health, and academic development and are especially important in the context of the disproportionate impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on previously underserved groups of students. CC24. ESSER and geared funds may be used to support broader activities that re-engage disconnected youth and reduce community violence in places where the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated inequities, leading to increases in the number of disconnected youth and violence. CC23. Signs of Suicide is an evidence-based program that educates students about the relationship between suicide and depression. The State Board of Education recently updated the suicide prevention and postvention strategies and supports documents, including the state's model policy on the prevention of suicide. Effective school safety strategies are described in Volume 2 of the U.S. ED's COVID-19 Handbook. Additional information on CVI strategies and investments is included in the administration's fact sheet. Provides social, emotional, and mental health supports, including professional development, to educators and school staff. ESSER and geared funds may be used to support implementation of curriculum, including related professional development on the social, emotional, mental health, and academic needs of students. CC3. Funds may also be used to provide professional development and training that increase awareness of mental health literacy for teachers and staff. CC14. ESSER and geared funds may be used to provide professional development to educators on research-based strategies for meeting students' social, emotional, and mental health needs. CC2. ESSER and geared funds may also be used to provide educator access to online counseling services and other mental health supports. CC14. The Nevada Social, Emotional and Academic Development (SEAD) Center is open to all educators and school staff. Youth Mental Health First Aid is a nationally recognized best practice and evidence-based training that supports educators and school staff through increased awareness of common mental health challenges and supportive responses. The Mental Health Technology Transfer Center (MHTTC) network has created a resource collection for educator well-being. The National Child Traumatic Stress Network provides online psychological first aid and skills for psychological recovery training courses. The state's Office of Suicide Prevention website includes information on requesting suicide prevention. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 30 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward Resource Guide Strategies and Practices to Avoid Strategy Brief Description of Practice S. Design Considerations Training, including Safety ALK and ESIST, and Suicide Prevention Messaging in Response to COVID-19. Strategies to Avoid Brief Description and Reasoning Reinforcing Stereotypes and Implicit Bias. Some survey questions can have the unintended effect of re-traumatizing, stigmatizing, or marginalizing students. Schools and leads are encouraged to use the resources in the previous section, but those who wish to design their own surveys should be mindful of equity concerns. Data, especially data disaggregated by demographic category, is a risk for reinforcement of harmful biases. Policymakers and practitioners should be mindful of this potential danger and avoid the deficit model in using data to reinforce harmful stereotypes or biases. Using unvalidated surveys. Surveys often run into design pitfalls that make results impossible to interpret. Common design issues include double-barreled questions and double negatives. Leveraging existing validated surveys can help avoid these issues. Not allocating resources. Community-based organizations, CBOs, will likely not be able to assist leads to address the added demands associated with the pandemic without receiving additional resources. Establishing partnerships with no expectations or track record. establishing partnerships on unspoken expectations, or without having full knowledge of the organization's track record, skills, capacities, and resources of new partners, can lead to misalignment on expectations and desired outcomes, reducing access to SISP. Reducing access to effective school social workers, counselors, psychologists, and other school health providers, i.e. specialized instructional support personnel, who are vital to supporting students' social, emotional and mental health needs, will not support access to the full range of support students, families, and educators will need as schools seek to address the impacts of interrupted learning. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 31 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward, Resource Guide System Priority, Access to High-Quality Professional Development for Educators. Central question: what changes in central office systems are likely to support educators in leading for equitable, high-quality teaching and learning? How can leads in schools engage in ongoing training of instructional and non-instructional staff, including training on trauma-informed practices, available SOCIO emotional resources, and anti-racist, critical pedagogical practices, to better position themselves in fostering a climate of professional growth? Strategy: brief description of practice. Design considerations. Instructional quality. Teachers will need additional daily planning time and training to redesign instruction and make the substantial instructional shifts necessary to provide high-quality learning experiences. Teaching educators how to appropriately differentiate and scaffold learning to avoid redundancy and promote access to well-scaffolded rigorous instruction. Funding for device and broadband access is crucial, but case studies suggest that investments in instructional quality are likely to offer equal payoff for lease. Ensure professional development is evidence-based and geared at improving students' outcomes based on the statewide plan for the improvement of pupils, SDIP. Consistent progress monitoring based on student outputs and student outcomes. Successful implementation of distance learning depends on the extent to which schools and teachers shift to new pedagogies, such as the flipped classroom model, to ensure strong lesson design. Synchronous class time is most effective when it is built around small group peer interactions and direct teacher-to-student feedback. Professional development that supports all teachers, which includes pre-K teachers, to make large shifts for distanced instruction is ongoing, relevant to their teaching assignment and instructional context, and includes regular opportunities for collaborative reflection and feedback on practice. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 32 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward, Resource Guide Strategy Brief Description of Practice. Design considerations. Teacher collaboration. Schedule time for teachers to communicate across grade level teams and efforts to maximize instructional time to help students catch up while avoiding redundancy. Cross-curricular teacher collaboration improves student outcomes and will be particularly crucial during this period. According to John Hattie's research, collective teacher efficacy is the leading influence on student achievement. It is the collective belief of teachers in their ability to positively affect students. Supporting the emotional well-being of teachers in CSITSIATSI schools is particularly important for effective teacher collaboration. Foreseeing additional stressors and implementing practices to reduce teacher stress and secondhand trauma is imperative to student success. Provide increased opportunities for joint professional development for pre-K, 3 teachers to support alignment of developmentally appropriate instruction that supports bridging learning gaps of foundational skills. In-service supports for new teachers. School systems provide in-service supports for new teachers whose student teaching experiences were interrupted or incomplete. High-quality mentoring for new teachers, defined both by the quantity of mentoring time and the qualifications of the mentor teachers, as measured by evaluation ratings, improves new teacher effectiveness. Equity-focused instructional leadership. Teaching and learning (T&L) units bolster principals' equity-focused instructional leadership by supporting their use of a common, research-based definition of high-quality, culturally responsive teaching, and by helping principals foster true teacher learning. Research underscores the importance of districts not just adopting definitions of high-quality, culturally responsive teaching, but also helping principals actively use those definitions to support teacher growth. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 33 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward Resource Guide Strategy Brief Description of Practice S. Design Considerations Communities with the autonomy and resources necessary for teacher success. T&L units have supported principals by dedicating T&L staff time and tools to help school principals build true teacher learning communities and by differentiating their support to schools based on school priorities and capacity. The Nevada Social, Emotional, and Academic Development (SEAD) Center. The Nevada SEAD Center is open to all educators. The SEAD Center is a free virtual support system and statewide community of educators developing social, emotional, and academic development skills that reinforce equitable environments and student success. Ongoing training of instructional and non-instructional staff, including training on trauma-informed practices, available SOCIO emotional resources, and anti-racist, critical pedagogical practices, to better position themselves in fostering a climate where students and families feel comfortable and supported. Open enrollment is available at https://nvdoe.instructure.com/enroll/AA98PN Establishment of externships for educators. Using high-quality professional development provides educators with resources to align CTE curriculum resources with industry standards.
Practices to avoid.
Utilize business and industry stakeholders to develop externships for educators to continue their professional development and maintain knowledge of industry standards. Strategies and practices to avoid brief description and reasoning, not planning with an equity-focused system in mind. Lees will miss a major opportunity if they do not heed the call of the current racial and social justice movement and plan now for a return to in-person schooling with fundamentally new, equity-focused systems in place. Redesigning in silos. Maintaining traditional central office silos will undermine Lee's efforts to build systems that support principals' equity-focused instructional leadership. Compliance is not supporting. Given the importance of principal leadership, Lees must support rather than supervise principals in their efforts to realize equitable teaching and learning. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 34 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward Resource Guide Strategies to Avoid Brief Description and Reasoning. Supervision should be about supporting. If principal supervisors use the Administrator Nevada Educator Performance Framework (NEPF) standards and indicators along with the Principal Supervisor NEPF standards to guide their practice, they will be providing support to help build capacity of school leaders. Low-quality teacher mentoring programs. Low-quality teacher mentoring programs, as well as those that are not sustained across multiple years, are likely to be ineffective. System priority. Access to high-quality instructional materials for educators and students. Central questions. What high-quality instructional materials are likely to support educators and improve student academic achievement and development? Do the high-quality instructional materials align with the state standards and evidence-based? Is the content culturally relevant and affirming for students? Strategy brief description of practice S. Design considerations high-impact programs. Using high-quality instructional materials that are aligned with classroom content and state standards and reinforces and support teachers' classroom instruction. High-quality instructional materials that align with the Nevada academic content standards. Consistent progress monitoring based on student outputs and student outcomes. Ensure high-quality instructional materials are provided equitably to all students. Ensure high-quality instructional materials are evidence-based and culturally relevant. Developmentally appropriate kindergarten. The needs of young learners are unique and different than those of students in upper elementary. A developmentally appropriate, play-based approach to instruction meets young learners where they are at and incorporates the science of child development. Adopt developmentally appropriate curriculum and instructional materials that are grounded both in the research on child development and learning and in knowledge about educational effectiveness to promote young children's optimal learning and development. Nevada Department of Education. Last updated June 10, 2021, page 35 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward. Resource Guide Strategy Brief Description of Practice S. Design Considerations. Ensure high-quality instructional materials are provided equitably to all students. Ensure high-quality instructional materials are evidence-based and culturally relevant. MyON has thousands of enhanced digital titles, fiction, non-fiction, graphic novels, and more at a wide range of reading levels. Includes flexible reading scaffolds and student-centered literacy tools to support close reading and writing skills. LEE's continuing to fund MyON can provide students and teachers unlimited, 24/7 access to the MyON digital resources. Career and Technical Student Organizations. Career and Technical Student Organizations, CTSO, enhance student learning through contextual instruction, leadership and personal development, applied learning, and real-world application. CTSOs work as an integral component of the classroom curriculum and instruction, building upon employability and career skills and concepts through the application and engagement of students in hands-on demonstrations and real-life and/or work experiences to a CTE program. CTSOs help guide students in developing a career path, a program of study, and provide opportunities in gaining the skills and abilities needed to be successful in those careers. Each of the 6 recognized CTSOs in the state of Nevada has curriculum designed for students that accelerate learning in their CTE pathways, improve employability skills, and develop leadership abilities. Each of the 74 CTE pathways in Nevada is connected to at least one of the 6 recognized CTSOs. Each CTSO has leadership conferences throughout the school year designed to provide students with opportunities to demonstrate their leadership, professional skills, and technical skills to industry leaders around the state. Nevada Department of Education. Last updated June 10, 2021, page 36 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward. Resource Guide Strategies and Practices to avoid brief description and reasoning remediation programs that supplant. Remediation programs that supplant regular instruction are likely to prevent students from learning new, grade-level content. Redundancy is already built into the system. Adding additional redundancy is likely to slow students down. Extended expository instruction. Distance learning is less successful when teachers require students to watch expository instruction for multiple hours each day. System priority. Support of parents, families, and communities. Central questions. How can LEEs in schools support and engage families and communities in their diverse contexts and build practical trust to support student learning? What does research tell us about how to use community-based resources to address academic and social gaps resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic? Strategy Brief Description of Practice S. Design Considerations. Communicating with families to support student success. Communications with families are most effective when they are regular, well-timed, and include actionable support strategies. Make sure all information sent to families is in their preferred language and family-friendly. Simple text message alerts to families with timely information about their children's academic progress may increase students' success in a low-cost way. Automatically enrolling families in updates rather than asking families to actively opt in alone significantly increases the effects of progress updates on student course success. Quality of interactions has been shown to more positively affect outcomes than frequency of interactions. Fewer communications that provide more. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 37 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward Resource Guide Strategy Brief Description of Practice S. Design considerations detail are likely to be more effective than frequent communications that raise additional questions for parents. Establishing routines and habits. Schools will be more successful engaging families and academics when they focus on helping students establish good work habits and time management rather than supplementing instruction or academic content. Routines are equally important for older children and adolescents. Routines provide a sense of security and predictability amid trauma and uncertainty, which can reduce anxiety and stress on children and families. When possible, schools should increase investment in dedicated staff or resources who can be on call for families to provide help. Helping families remain in the role of supporting rather than providing instruction can reduce family stress and conflict over schoolwork at home. For such a strategy to succeed, schools must provide sufficient instruction so that families do not need to teach content. Reducing chronic absenteeism. Schools that take steps to educate families about the importance of attending school have been able to increase attendance for chronically absent students. The Attendance Matters Project conducted a randomized field experiment examining the impact of an intervention. The study found attendance increased by 15% across all students, and, notably, that the treatment effect was more than twice the size for EL students compared to native English-speaking students. The intervention took families' native language into account and sent mailers in Spanish to students from Spanish-speaking families. Tailored support. Tailored support strategies for families, including take-home books, text messages, and family engagement. Providing children in high-poverty schools with books for reading at home, ideally chosen based on student. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 38 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward Resource Guide Strategy Brief Description of Practice S. Design considerations programs can effectively supplement in-school curriculum. Preferences significantly improve students' subsequent reading performance. Should be evidence-based. Consistent progress monitoring based on student outputs and student outcomes. Engaging caregivers by sending text messages that include tips and encouragement on home learning activities has shown promise as a low-cost tool for improving student outcomes. Utilize our county libraries for instruction and support. Family and community partnerships. Schools must ensure genuine representation across familial communities to promote authentic engagement. Evidence supports the use of comprehensive school site partnerships, such as full-service community schools, to leverage existing resources and provide the structure for families and community members to strengthen the school. Bringing more diverse perspectives into school decisions increases the likelihood that families from different backgrounds gain access to unshared tacit knowledge that lets them effectively advocate for their children. Authentic communication is essential for building trust and buy-in. Several strong models of school community partnership provide a theoretical framework and research base for the impact of community-based assets that support the whole child. Guides to start and strengthen school community partnerships can help schools and districts build partnerships that are responsive to local needs and that include family and community members in authentic ways. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 39 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward Resource Guide Strategy Brief Description of Practice S. Design considerations. Integrated or wraparound services. Integrated or wraparound services, where schools partner with community organizations to provide students, including early learners, with direct non-academic supports, also show meaningful evidence of success. Community-based partnerships are able to coordinate their school-level efforts most effectively when supported by systems-level coordinating infrastructure. Sometimes referred to as integrated student services, wraparound supports provide direct service through partner organizations either at the school site or through a referral process. Many of the models with the strongest evidence base use site-based coordinators to build out services for individual students. A cross-sector systemic approach ensures that system leaders engage in mobilizing the resources of their organizations and align resources to meet the needs of communities and schools by leveraging existing data and state and federal funding. Extended learning opportunities. Extended learning time programs provided by community partner groups can be adapted in innovative ways to support students, including early learners, during the pandemic. A wide variety of after-school program evaluations across the country demonstrate positive academic and behavioral outcomes for students such as improved attendance and engagement, reduced truancy, and improved behavior during the school day. Community partners can work with schools to create community learning hubs that support the various opening plans for school districts. Home visits, early childhood home visitation system. Home visits provide the opportunity to build partnerships with families and support the needs of students and their families. Different home visit models exist for different grade levels. No targeting. Visit all or a cross-section of students so there is no stigma. Visits are arranged in advance. Visits may be held at another mutually agreed upon location, if need be. Offer teachers and support staff a stipend to provide individual support and to do regular check-ins with Nevada Department of Education. Last updated June 10, 2021, page 40 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward, Resource Guide Strategy Brief Description of Practice S Design Considerations Children and Families, including families experiencing homelessness. The transition to kindergarten. Create transition teams that focus on planning and evaluating activities to build relationships between families, schools, including community-based childcare, and other critical partners and support families and children transitioning into kindergarten. Relationships with families are vital for healthy child development and navigation of new experiences in early years. For children to be as prepared as possible for the start of kindergarten, it is important for families to also be engaged and aware of expectations for the new year. Only a small percentage of incoming kindergartners are served in district pre-K programs, so it is important to establish communication and relationships with the families of the students entering school from other programs and the community family engagement staff. Provide support staff such as social workers and counselors to support family needs and enhance comprehensive services. Provide families capacity building opportunities to support their child (REN) at home. Provide consultation, coaching, and support services to families of students with disabilities, English learners, racial and ethnic minorities, students experiencing homelessness, and children in foster care. Develop resources and supports for continued distance learning or interrupted schedules as the COVID-19 crisis continues and impacts school attendance. Deliver family training and resources in multiple languages to help families navigate virtual individualized education program, IEP, planning and transition for children with special needs. Nevada Department of Education. Last updated June 10, 2021, page 41 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward, Resource Guide Strategies and Practices to avoid brief description and reasoning, lowering academic standards and workload. Given the level of concern, particularly among families from low-income backgrounds, about student progress, lowering standards and expectations for student learning is likely to raise rather than alleviate parental anxiety. Concerns and assumptions about families' willingness and capacity to help their kids are often driven by deficit perceptions and stereotypes about socioeconomic status and race rather than authentic understanding. Schools should focus on addressing the underlying root cause of issues or concerns and offer solutions that align with each family and student's particular circumstance. Minimal or infrequent communication. Communication strategies that wait until the end of the quarter or semester are unlikely to shift family or student behavior. Choosing the right communication strategy means limiting communications to focus on the highest priority needs, not allocating resources to family and community engagement initiatives. Community-based organizations, CBOs, will likely not be able to assist LEAs to address the added demands associated with the pandemic without receiving additional resources. Establishing partnerships with no expectations or track record. Establishing partnerships on unspoken expectations, or without having full knowledge of the organization's track record, skills, capacities, and resources of new partners, can lead to misalignment on expectations and desired outcomes. Working in isolation. Systems that move forward to address new demands without assessing existing resources can fail to uncover assets that are already available in the broader community. Conducting a community health needs assessment can be beneficial in many ways, including ensuring that services are not duplicated and providing opportunities to coordinate services across and within partners. Punitive practices. Punitive practices for students and families who are not meeting expectations for attendance or engagement can be inequitable and will likely discourage engagement even further. Nevada Department of Education. Last updated June 10, 2021, page 42 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward. Resource Guide System Priority. Access to adult education and workforce development opportunities. Central question: how can research inform student transitions from high school to college and career, given the financial and health uncertainties that students, particularly those who are marginalized and traditionally underserved, are facing due to the COVID-19 pandemic? Strategy brief description of practice S. Design considerations enhancing institutional knowledge. Student trajectories can shift when students are made aware of institutional discounts, grants, and scholarships, particularly those offered by more selective institutions. Students and families, especially those who are low-income and first-generation college seekers, frequently need assistance with processes for obtaining the need-based financial aid for which they are eligible. Schools and LEAs can use existing administrative data to target and tailor advising about post-secondary options. Provide students with tailored information about their likely out-of-pocket tuition at a variety of institutions, along with no paperwork college application fee waivers. LEAs and nonprofits that send text messages to students during the summer after high school graduation reminding them of financial aid and other deadlines, i.e., course enrollment, residence life paperwork, required orientations, etc., found that college matriculation increased by 10–15%. Interventions and guidance. Students often benefit from a better understanding of their chances of admission to institutions. Include the use of local, regional, and national labor market information when providing post-secondary guidance along with career interest inventories. Low-cost interventions, such as personalized online college planning tools that match students with potential colleges, and proactive advising for college-bound students during the summer after high school. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 43 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward. Resource Guide Strategy brief description of practice S. Design considerations students and families can make more informed decisions during post-secondary planning. Graduation, have each been shown to increase college going. Virtual advising may be a necessity for many students and schools during the pandemic. Low-income and first-generation college students benefit from intensive one-on-one coaching through the college application and aid processes. Dedicated staffing for these programs. Career and Technical Education, CTE. Post-secondary options including but no limited to credentials, non-degree credentials, apprenticeships, associate degrees, bachelor's degrees, and military opportunities. Students transitioning from high school directly to careers may benefit from advanced career and technical education, CTE, in addition to employer and post-secondary partnerships. Students who enroll in multi-year sequences of CTE courses complete high school at higher rates and earn more when they enter the labor force. Successful CTE models include the opportunity to take a sequence of courses that build skills in a particular CTE area. Students who enroll in CTE programs are more likely to pursue post-secondary opportunities to include credentials, non-degree credentials, apprenticeships, associate degrees, bachelor degrees, and military. CTE program funding should focus on programs of study that are high-skill, high-wage, and/or in demand in Nevada to support Nevada's economy. Target student populations that have historically been underrepresented in CTE programs. Adult education. Individuals without a high school diploma are most likely to be unemployed during an economic downturn. Individuals with a high school diploma or equivalent credential have significantly higher annual earnings than those who do not. Students benefit from adult high school diploma services and other services related to transition to post-secondary education. Nevada Department of Education. Last updated June 10, 2021, page 44 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward, Resource Guide Strategies and Practices to Avoid System Priority, Safe, Efficient, and Equitable Reopening of School Buildings. Central question: what key prevention strategies are required and supported by the state and local health departments? What community data is being used to determine in-person learning? How are facilities being prepared to safely welcome students back into school buildings? Strategies to avoid brief description and reasoning. Reducing access to counselors. Reducing access to effective college and career counselors will limit informed course selection and hinder post-secondary enrollment, which is likely to increase inequality in post-secondary outcomes. Strategy. Brief description of practice S. Design considerations considering reopening conditions. When weighing the risks and benefits of various models for reopening schools in the fall, plans must consider local COVID-19 conditions, available funding, and the realities of students' home environments. For online plans, access to appropriate technology and connectivity for students and families is paramount, but not sufficient. Face-to-face plans will likely also require the provision of basic hygiene and safety supplies, creative transportation plans, and safe, socially distanced, on-site space at schools, shelters, and other settings for students to complete homework. Plans that include staggered schedules or spreading students out across district buildings should consider how consistent schedules and familiar surroundings may be helpful for students. Students' age, transportation needs, and unique medical issues may also be important variables. On an ongoing basis, consider making alternative arrangements for assessing students' needs. And Nevada Department of Education. Last updated June 10, 2021, page 45 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward, Resource Guide Strategy. Brief description of practice S. Design considerations connecting them to resources that they might otherwise have received at school. Access to food, basic hygiene, e.g., masks, sanitizer, deodorant, feminine products, and school supplies, e.g., books, paper, pens, clipboards for a portable desk would facilitate instructional learning and help keep students safe. Prioritizing student groups. Priority for in-person schooling should be given to the students who are likely to struggle most with distance learning, including younger students and students with individualized educational plans, IEP. The National Academy of Sciences suggests bringing back younger students and students with disabilities first for in-person learning due to these student groups' learning needs and ability to engage with distance learning. Mitigation strategies. Implement key mitigation strategies. correct use of masks, social distancing, hand hygiene, respiratory etiquette, cleaning, disinfection, and contact tracing. Disseminate critical information about coronavirus to students, families, staff, and the community from public health officials that are culturally appropriate and accessible. Develop and receive guidance for plans to prevent and control cases and outbreaks and align these plans with procedures for screening and cleaning. Develop a plan for physical distancing recommendations in schools based on case, contact, and outbreak data. Ensure essential needs of students and staff in quarantine or isolation are met and assist in identifying these persons, including coordinating meals and access to items like toiletries. Coordinate with local health departments to provide regular on-site testing for staff, children, and families. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 46 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward, Resource Guide Strategy Brief Description of Practice S Design Considerations Budget Reductions. Some budget reductions affect student learning and well-being more than others, and the choices often come with trade-offs. Considering the trade-offs carefully can help reduce the negative effects of budget cuts. Economic downturns can provide opportunities for districts to bring new, differently qualified employees into the workforce. Cutting after-school programs could help balance budgets but would leave students more vulnerable outside of school without access to support from other adults and peers. Reducing extracurricular activities and support services could reduce impacts on class sizes but negatively affect student engagement and academic performance. Delaying pay raises or furloughing non-working staff can reduce layoffs. Research shows layoffs have negative consequences for students. Large-scale reductions in force have negative consequences on teacher effectiveness, even for the individuals who retain their jobs. Strategies and practices to avoid brief description and reasoning. Deficit-oriented practices. Deficit-oriented and stigmatizing practices may have adverse short and long-term consequences for students and their families. One-size-fits-all solutions that assume all students and families have the same experiences or have the same needs are unlikely to effectively meet the diverse needs and assets of students and families. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 47 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward, Resource Guide LEA Checklist. The next steps related to the allocation of federal relief funds are as follows. ARP-ESSER funding application opens June 14, 2021. Once we release the application, it will start the 30-day window for LEAs to complete their plans for safe return to in-person instruction and continuity of services, and 90-day window to complete ARP-ESSER funding plans. LEA plans for safe return to July 14, 2021. LEA plans for safe return will be submitted via EPAGE and will be due per federal requirements no later than July 14, 30 days after allocation of funds. LEA ARP-ESSER funding plans due September 10, 2021. LEA plans for ARP-ESSER funds are distinct and have a separate set of federal requirements than LEA plans for safe return to in-person instruction and continuity of services. LEA ARP-ESSER funding plans will be due in EPAGE September 10. The following checklist prepares local education agencies (LEAs) for submitting an American Rescue Plan Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief (ARP-ESSER) application. Reopening of Safe and Health Schools Plan O Upload Return to Instruction Plan O Upload LEA ARP-ESSER Plan. LEA Plans. Use of funds and stakeholder engagement. O Spending Plan Summary. Black small square addressing learning loss versus remaining funds to address COVID-19 response and recovery. Black small square. LEAs should anticipate uploading their budget information with function code, object code, and amounts. Black small square. ARP-ESSER funds may be used for pre-award costs dating back to March 13, 2020, when the national emergency was declared and is available for obligation by Cs and subrecipients through September 30, 2023. Budget matrix, black small square. LEAs should anticipate using the budget meta tags to code each budgetary category. Learning loss, school repairs and improvements, long-term closures plan, special populations needs, distance learning technology, federal statute authorized activities, LEA coordinated response to COVID-19, SEL services, extended learning opportunities, operation and service continuity, sanitize and clean facilities, training staff on infectious diseases, emergency plans, preparedness response, administrative, indirect costs. American Rescue Plan assurances. Contacts, black small square, identical to competitive ESSER assurances from earlier applications. ESSER funding contact information. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 48 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward Resource Guide Appendix A, approved statewide projects to support students through federal relief funding. The below projects have been proposed by the Nevada Department of Education and approved by the legislature using federal relief funds that are at the discretion of the state education agency, ESSER statewide activities and administrative set-aside, and the governor's emergency education relief funds. NDE is sharing high-level overviews of these initiatives with the intent of preventing duplicative investments by LEAs in services or resources already being provided by the state. Project Overview System Priority Closing Opportunity Gaps for Students Who Have Been Traditionally Underserved. High School Graduation. $4.2 million to design programming and implement incentives to support students who did not graduate high school with their cohort due to circumstances created by COVID-19. Programming will support 5th seniors meeting the graduation requirements for a high school diploma and completing their 12 education experience ready for.
Because I think I need to do this again. Stop the share and then start the share again. Because anytime they just get too happy. Which one is the preview? The preview of the path forward. I think that's it. That's it. Now I'm going to take this, all the way down to the last paragraph, that's fine, and continue to read.
2021 Nevada Path Forward Resource Guide Appendix A, approved statewide projects to support students through federal relief funding. The below projects have been proposed by the Nevada Department of Education and approved by the legislature using federal relief funds that are at the discretion of the state education agency, ESSER statewide activities and administrative set-aside, and the governor's emergency education relief funds. NDE is sharing high-level overviews of these initiatives with the intent of preventing duplicative investments by LEAs in services or resources already being provided by the state. Project Overview System Priority Closing Opportunity Gaps for Students Who Have Been Traditionally Underserved. High School Graduation. $4.2 million to design programming and implement incentives to support students who did not graduate high school with their cohort due to circumstances created by COVID-19. Programming will support 5th-year seniors in meeting the graduation requirements for a high school diploma and concluding their K-12 education experience ready for college or careers. Incentivizing pathways to teaching. $20.7 million to fund stipends for pre-service teachers completing their student teaching or final semesters in Educator preparation programs will strengthen the pipeline and retain support students in their progress to on-time completion. Ensuring that qualified candidates complete ready to obtain their professional license as a K-12 educator in Nevada will expand Nevada's teacher workforce and help ensure equitable access to effective teachers for all students. Expanding access to college-level coursework. $1.6 million to expand equitable access to dual enrollment coursework for all Nevada students. Despite broad opportunities for dual enrollment in Nevada, there are critical gaps in enrollment, specifically for low-income, first-generation, and underrepresented students. Access to dual enrollment must be available to all Nevada high school students, regardless of their zip code or socioeconomic background. Strategic School Improvement Planning Platform $1 million to purchase or build out a statewide digital platform for school performance plans, district performance plans, and comprehensive needs assessments which inform those plans. NDE is currently working with districts in the pilot phase of implementing updated performance plans and have identified an opportunity to create a single platform that will streamline improvement planning for districts and schools and make it easier to ensure alignment of improvement plans to the statewide plan for the improvement of pupils as well as local priorities. Pre-kindergarten access $5 million to maintain and expand state-funded pre-kindergarten seats for Nevada's most vulnerable children and support NDE's goal of all children having access to quality early care in Nevada Department of Education. Last updated June 10, 2021, page 49 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward Resource Guides Uniform Financial Management System $6 million to develop a uniform financial management system to enhance transparency and improve the accuracy and timeliness of financial accounting and budgeting. Project Overview Education Nevada Ready State Pre-K served 3,094 in the 2019-20 school year, which is approximately 20% of all eligible 4-year-olds. System priorities: safe, efficient, and equitable reopening of school buildings. System priorities: social and emotional support of students in response to COVID-19. School-based mental health professionals $7.5 million to support districts and charter schools in hiring 100 school-based mental health professionals. These additional licensed providers are needed to support staff and student populations with ongoing recovery from the pandemic and its effects. Multi-tiered systems of support $1.7 million to hire a multi-tiered systems of support (MTSS) coach to assist each district in meeting the immediate needs for additional interventions to support students throughout the recovery phase of the pandemic. MTSS helps schools to identify struggling students early so that they may receive assistance quickly, and includes strong universal teaching approaches to reduce the amount of students needing interventions. MTSS is also a systematic, continuous improvement framework in which database problem-solving and decision-making is practiced across all levels of the educational system for supporting students. Infinite campus expansion for social-emotional support $150,000 to build out reporting features in the statewide student information system related to specialized instructional support personnel, SISP, school counselors, nurses, psychologists, social workers, and library media specialists. This enhanced capability will support the successful implementation of the Lifeline project currently being developed and implemented throughout Clark County School District as a pilot for all other districts. Coordinating school-based behavioral health $260,000 for costs related to contractors to support districts and schools in ensuring equitable access to behavioral health services during the COVID-19 recovery. Included in this amount is $50,000 for billing contractors PCG and Dutch Sophie to build out new school-based services so that LEAs using these contractors will be able to bill Medicaid for additional services by September 2021. Sustaining Safe Voice $333,000 including a subgrant to the Department of Public Safety DPS to continue to provide the necessary level of 24/7 staffing for the Safe Voice TIP platform. In addition, funds are needed to fund the maintenance of the Safe Voice platform. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 50 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward Resource Guide Project Overview Restorative Justice $380,000 for a national provider to provide evidence-based trainings and coaching for district and school staff and school resource officers across the state. The goal is to create a cadre of 20 trained trainers in the area of restorative justice practices to assist district school staff and students through the recovery and renewal phases of the pandemic. As of now, this expertise is a significant gap in Nevada, which hampers our efforts to advance equity and to decrease disproportionality in student discipline. System priority access to high-quality professional development. Science of literacy professional development, $1 million to partner with an external expert in the areas of early literacy and the science of reading to support resources for the implementation of a statewide professional learning opportunity at no cost to educators for the 2021-22 school year. The professional learning experience would take place in a cohort model where educators are learning how to apply the work to daily instructional practice. System priority Canvas learning management system access to high-quality instructional materials, $2 million to extend the existing contract beyond its expiration of September 30, 2022 to September 30, 2023. Canvas is designed to simplify teaching and elevate learning. It provides professional development as well as high-quality pre-K-12 curriculum and courses developed by Nevada digital engineers and other educators across the state. One key benefit is it provides the ability to access multiple sources through a single sign-on. Currently, 551,506 users are active in Canvas across the state. This includes educators and students from Churchill, Clark, Elko, Eureka, Nye, and Story school districts and 17 charter schools. Available to districts and charter schools on an opt-in basis. MIO and $1.5 million to extend the existing contract beyond its expiration of June 30, 2021 to June 30, 2022 at a cost of $1,500,000. In partnership with Renaissance and the Nevada State Library, Public Records, and Archive, NDE launched Summer Reading with MION during May 2020. Nevada students have read more than 56 million minutes since the implementation of MION began. Discovery Education experienced $2.2 million to extend the existing contract beyond its expiration of September 30, 2022 to September 30, 2024. The flexible K-12 experience platform keeps students connected to learning whether at home or at school. It covers a wide array of academic subjects including math, science, social studies, and more, and offers resources for families on how to support students in online environments as well as social-emotional supports. In addition, Experience offers multimedia. Nevada Department of Education, last updated June 10, 2021, page 51 of 52. 2021 Nevada Path Forward Resource Guide Project Overview. Activities for students, like hands-on laboratory activities, and on-demand virtual field trips that will take them around the world. To date, 95% of all schools in Nevada have used Experience. Between September 2020 and March 2021, over 15,000 educators and over 200,000 students are actively using Discovery Education resources, available to districts and charter schools on an opt-in basis. System priority support of parents, families, and communities. Translation services, $2 million to contract for translation services to allow us to prioritize public-facing documents for translation into multiple languages, including but not limited to Spanish and Tagalog. Integrate and increase accessibility of web resources, $799,000 to hire a contractor to conduct an audit of our public-facing resources that will help us develop a request for proposals for a website redesign. NDE's website layout is not public-friendly or easily navigated by individuals who do not use it every day. In addition, the Nevada Digital Learning Collaborative website, launched in April 2020, is entirely separate from NDE's general website, and we would endeavor to create seamless integration across web resources. Nevada Digital Learning Collaborative.
Was that it? When did it start? I think stop right there. So let's just take these last two. These ones. I'm going to start to read it again.
$799,000 to hire a contractor to conduct an audit of our public-facing resources that will help us develop a request for proposals for a website redesign. NDE's website layout is not public-friendly or easily navigated by individuals who do not use it every day. In addition, The Nevada Digital Learning Collaborative website launched in April 2020 is entirely separate from NDE's general website, and we would endeavor to create seamless integration across web resources. Nevada Digital Learning Collaborative $855,070 to hire staff work full-time on sustaining the Nevada Digital Learning Collaborative, NVDLC, as well as stipends for digital engineers, soon to be known as digital ambassadors. The digital ambassadors are educators and administrators with superpowers related to digital learning who are responsible for building capacity across the field and curating content for the NVDLC. Currently, the NVDLC website has had over 45,000 views, 14,000 unique visitors, and over 200 published resources. System priority access to adult education and workforce development opportunities. Youth Career Pathways Platform $450,000 to develop an education-focused labor market data dashboard with accompanying professional development training for educators. This data dashboard will function specifically for Nevada to align career and technical education (CTE) courses and pathways to their local labor market to assist students in finding employment opportunities due to jobs lost during COVID-19. Furthermore, the Pathway to Careers math curricula for algebra and geometry will be provided to support career exposure and preparation within high-value career pathways for students.
Okay, see, last updated June 10th, 2021. It's just amazing how they didn't have that conversation with the local community, as it still concerns me where the local community actually is, not where they should be. But I can promise you, before this is all over, data will appear, and that's what we're waiting on. I'll be back, y'all. Have a great day.